A passage from CAT 2024 slot 2 पेपर. ठीक है, तो इसको हम लोग पहले we'll just read it, and in between I will be explaining as usual, and then questions. The job of reviewer is thankless. Collectively, academics spend around 70 million hours every year evaluating each other's manuscripts on the behalf of scholarly journals, and they usually receive no monetary compensation and little if any recognition for their research. So kind of complaining in the beginning, kind of complaining, a complaint from the peer reviewers' perspective that their job is thankless. They spend so much of time evaluating each other's research papers and articles, like in the process of publishing for scholarly journals, but they receive little recognition or like monetary compensation is not there, right? तो आई होप आप सबको पब्लिशिंग प्रोसेस पता होगा, जहाँ पे अगर दो रिसर्चर्स अपनी अपनी रिसर्च कंडक्ट कर रहे हैं और अपना रिसर्च पेपर पब्लिश करना चाहते हैं, तो वो अपना जो रिसर्च पेपर है वो पहले किसी जर्नल को सबमिट करेंगे. फॉर एग्जांपल लैंसेट एक जर्नल है जहाँ पे दे विल सबमिट देयर रिपोर्ट्स, and then the journal will decide whether to publish that report or not based on their editorial review and peer reviews of it. And this passage is totally about peer review. And uh, as we have read, it started with a complaint that peer reviewers are spending so much of time, putting a lot of effort in reviewing each other's manuscripts, but they are receiving no monetary compensation and little if any recognition for them. Some do it as a way to keep abreast with developments in their field. Some simply see it as a duty to discipline. Either way, academic publishing would likely to crumble without them. So, if it is if it is not of any, not adding any value in terms of money and recognition, why probably these reviewers are doing it to keep abreast with developments in their field because they want to stay updated, and some do it as a discipline, a duty. Either way, academic publishing would likely crumble without them. So, for academic publishing, peer reviewing is a must process, and it should be an integral part of academic publishing. Otherwise, the academic publishing would crumble. In recent years, some scientists have begun posting their reviews online mainly to claim credit for their work. So some scientists started posting their reviews online. ऑनलाइन पोस्ट करना चालू कर दिया क्योंकि उनको क्रेडिट किया था अपने वर्क का. Sites like Publons allow researchers to either share entire referee reports or simply a list of journals for whom they have carried out a review. इससे Publon नाम का एक साइट है which allows मतलब researchers अपना entire referee report सबमिट कर सकते हैं, शेयर कर सकते हैं पब्लिकली, और या फिर एक लिस्ट ऑफ जर्नल्स की कौन से जर्नल्स के लिए वो लोग रिव्यू कर रहे हैं, ये वो लोग शेयर कर सकते हैं. द राइज ऑफ पब्लॉन suggests that academics are increasingly placing value on the work of peer review and asking others, such as grant funders, to do the same. peer reviewing का जो प्रोसेस है उसमें जो एकेडमिक्स है वो थोड़ा ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंस उसमें उसको ज़्यादा वैल्यू दे रहे हैं. और ये क्यों कह रहे हैं, क्योंकि पबलॉन का राइस जो पबलॉन साइट है उसको अच्छा पॉपुलैरिटी मिला है. इट इज बिकमिंग पॉपुलर अमंग द academic community. While that's vital in published or perished culture of academia, there is also immense value in the data underlying peer review. So data is also important. Peer review is important in published or perished culture of academia, but there is also immense value in the data underlying peer review. So data is also important. Sharing peer review data, this is now transforming into peer review data. And why peer review data is important. Sharing peer review data could help journals stamp out fraud, inefficiency, and systemic bias in the academic publishing. So this is how it will help, right? So it will rule out any kind of frauds, any kind of inefficiencies or problems in the system, and biases. Biases. If there is any bias, then it will also help uh, to take out, or to just remove that bias from the system. Peer review data could also help root out bias. Last year, a study based on peer review data for nearly 24,000 submissions to biomedical journal eLife found that women and non-Westerners were vastly underrepresented among peer reviewers. So this is entirely talking about the bias, and an example is given of a study which was conducted for a biomedical journal eLife, and there was 24,000 submissions. तो 24,000 सबमिशन हुए थे, right? Peer review data for nearly 24,000 सबमिशन, और उसमें ये पाया गया कि women और non westerners were vastly underrepresented among the peer review. So this is a bias. We are just highlighting a bias which is there by giving an example. Only around 1 in 5 reviewers was female, 20% reviewers were females, and less than 2% of reviewers were based in developing countries. So 98% reviewers from developed countries only. From developing countries, they have included very less reviewers, or like negligible 2% of reviewers were there from developing countries. So this is adding to the bias point. Opening publishing peer review data could perhaps also help journals address another problem in academic publishing: fraudulent peer reviews. Fraudulent peer reviews is a problem in academic publishing, and if peer review data is published, if peer review data is published openly, then help. It will it will help in dealing with fraudulent peer reviews. Right? For instance, a minority of authors have been known to use phony email addresses to pose as an outside expert and review their own manuscript. तो खुद के ही जो रिसर्च पेपर है उसका रिव्यू लिखना फोनी ईमेल एड्रेसेस यूज करके, ऐसा एक फ्रॉडुलेंट प्रैक्टिस होता होता है। तो ये फ्रॉडुलेंट प्रैक्टिस को टैकल किया जा सकता है अगर हम पीयर रिव्यू डेटा पब्लिश करें। पीयर रिव्यू डेटा मतलब कितने मेल्स है, कितने फीमेल्स है, कितने वेस्टर्नर्स है, कितने नॉन वेस्टर्नर्स है, इस टाइप का अगर हम लोग डेटा पब्लिश करें तो उससे हेल्प हो जाएगा ये प्रोसेस को और थोड़ा सा ओपन करने में। पब्लिशिंग प्रोसेस और थोड़ा सा ओपन हो जाएगा और लेजिटिमेट हो जाएगा, राइट? लेजिटिमेट इन द सेंस कि उसमें ज़्यादा बायसेस नहीं होंगे, फ्रॉड्स नहीं होंगे। तो कैसे हम उसको और बायस फ्री एंड इनएफिशिएंसी फ्री कर सकते हैं, इस पर ये पैसेज, इसके बारे में ये पैसेज बात करें। Opponents of open peer review commonly argue that confidentiality is vital to the integrity of review process. Referees may be less critical of manuscripts if their reports are published, especially if they are revealing their identities by signing them. So if open peer review means जो रिव्यू लिखा है किसी रिसर्चर ने वो ओपनली अगर उसका आइडेंटिटी रिवील कर दिया कि कौन रिसर्चर ने ये रिव्यू किया है, तो प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा। क्या प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा कि रेफरीज में भी लेस क्रिटिकल ऑफ द मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट, तो वो ज्यादा क्रिटिसाइज नहीं करेंगे एक दूसरे को, क्योंकि नाम आ जाएगा ना कौन क्रिटिसाइज कर रहा है, राइट? तो एक डर रहेगा, especially if they are revealing their identities by signing them. Some also hold concerns that open reviewing may deter referees from agreeing to judge manuscripts in the first place. तो कुछ जो रेफरीज, कुछ जो रिव्यूअर्स हैं, वो मना कर देंगे कि मैं ये रिव्यूइंग नहीं करूंगा, राइट? बिकॉज और दे विल टेक लॉन्गर टू डू सो आउट ऑफ फियर, ओपन रिव्यू मतलब जैसा रिव्यू लिखा है वैसे का वैसा पोस्ट कर देना, और डेटा मतलब उसका सिर्फ डेटा आएगा। तो ओपन रिव्यू के खिलाफ है कुछ लोग कि उनका कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी और उनका नाम नहीं आना चाहिए। राइट, अगर नाम आ जाएगा तो ये सब प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है कि वो ज़्यादा क्रिटिसाइज नहीं कर पाएंगे, और बाकी सब जो चीज़ें मैंने बोली, राइट, तो उनको ज़्यादा टाइम लगेगा, और वो लोग मना भी कर देंगे शायद कि मुझे रिव्यूइंग नहीं करना, बिकॉज दे आर साइंटिस्ट। So sometimes it it they might deny the whole taking up the whole process, like being part of the whole reviewing process. Right? Even when the content of reviews and the identity of reviewers can't be shared publicly, perhaps journals could share the data with outside researchers for study. तो बाहर के जो रिसर्चर है, बाहर के मतलब जो एक कम्युनिटी है उसके बाहर outside researchers को एक स्टडी के लिए दे सकते हैं, or they could release other figures that wouldn't compromise anonymity of reviews, but that might answer important questions about how long the reviewing process takes, how many researchers, editors have to reach out on average to find one who will carry out the work, and geographic distribution of peer review. Right? तो डेटा पब्लिश किया जा सकता है, डेटा कौन सा डेटा कि कितना प्रोसेस में उसका टाइम लगा है, हाउ हाउ लॉन्ग द रिव्यूइंग प्रोसेस इज, एंड ज्योग्राफिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कि कहाँ कहाँ से रिव्यूअर्स है, और कितने रिसर्चर और एडिटर्स ने अप्रोच किया चूज करने के लिए कि कौन वो पर्टिकुलर रिव्यू लिखेगा। हाउ मेनी रिसर्चर एडिटर्स हैव टू रीच आउट टू ऑन एवरेज टू फाइंड आउट, मतलब कितने रिसर्चर्स और एडिटर्स को कांटेक्ट किया गया। ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि जो अवेलेबल थे 10 लोग उन्होंने ही रिव्यू किया, बल्कि एक वास्ट पूल से विमेन, मैन, वेस्टर्नर्स, नॉन वेस्टर्नर्स, और भी अगर कुछ डिफरेंसेस होंगे, तो वो सारे डिफरेंसेस, सारा इंक्लूसिव प्रोसेस है, इसमें सारे ही कॉर्नर से रिसर्चर्स को अप्रोच किया गया है टू कीप दैट प्रोसेस transparent and bias free and fraud free. Right? Of course, opening up data underlying reviewing process will not fix peer review entirely, and there may be instances in which there are valid reviews to keep the content of peer reviews hidden and the identity of referees confidential. But the norm should be to shift from opacity in all cases to opacity only when necessary. तो जहाँ पे opacity necessary है, जहाँ पे उनका आइडेंटिटी और जहाँ पे कुछ चीजें छुपाना जरूरी है, वो केस बाय केस जर्नल्स कैन डिसाइड, बट दे कांट keep this process very rigid and hidden from uh, hidden from public, right? So there should be transparency in the process. So their identities can be kept hidden, but anonymity can be maintained, but data can be shared publicly. This is what the passage is suggesting, and there should be transparency in the process. Question 2. Based on the passage, we can infer that author would most probably support publicizing peer review data rather than publication of actual review. Yes, he does, preserving the anonymity of reviewers to protect them from criticism. Yes, he does. Most careful screening to ensure the recruitment of content familiar peer reviewers. Greater transparency across the peer review process in academic publishing. Now, most probably support, based on the passage, most probably support कहा है, तो ये जो greater transparency है, all these A and B's are like uh, part of the entire view. But in nutshell, what the author wants to suggest is greater transparency across the peer review process in academic publishing. And in this bringing this greater transparency, A and B can be incremental. This is what the author has said, right? So the correct option will be, let me get a pen. correct option will be option B. Right? Then next question. Next question. According to the passage, which of the following is the only reason not given in favor of making peer review data public? So, which is the reason that is not made in favor of what? In favor of making the peer review data public. So, we'll read one by one and we will figure out which is the reason which is in favor and which is not. It can tackle the problem of selecting appropriately qualified reviewers for academic writing. No, I don't think that this is in favor. So you will not have to read further. This is the correct answer. Right? Because this statement is not the reason, is not is is not the reason given in favor. It is not in favor of making peer review data public. Let's read B, C, and D as well. It would highlight the gender and race biases. Yes, this is in favor. This is in favor. Right? We are asked to find out which is not in favor. Which reason is not in favor. It will deal with peer review fraud such as authors publishing bogus reviews of their work. This is in favor, right? Because it talked about frauds and how publishing peer review data will help. It could address various inefficiencies. Yes, this was also a reason inefficiency के बारे में बोला था and fraudulent practices that continue in academic publishing. So A is your correct answer. Then we'll move to the next question. According to the passage, some are opposed to making peer reviews public for all the following reasons except. So again, four reasons are there, but one statement will be will 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 contradict. Right? Is an exception. One statement is an exception, and we have to find that statement, and that will be an exception to that will be in opposite that will be an exception, right? Delays the manuscript evaluation process as reviewers would take longer to write their reviews. So this is not an exception. Make reviewers reluctant to review manuscripts, especially if these are critical of their submitted work. This is not the one. Leave the reviewers unexposed to unwarranted and unjustified criticism and comments from others. So this is the one that we are looking for, right? And why this is the one? It is saying if we'll review, if we will make peer reviews public, right, then their identities will be exposed. They will not remain unexposed. So this unexposed word, it this unexposed word makes it an exception. Right? Deter reviewers from producing honest, critical reviews. So this is also not an exception. Next one, all of the following are listed as a reason why academics choose to review other scholars' works except. तो अदर स्कॉलर्स का जो रिपोर्ट है, जो रिसर्च पेपर है, वो रिव्यू क्यों करते हैं ये लोग, उसके दो तीन वजह है दी थी, तो उसमें से कौन सी अ, इनमें से कौन सी एक वजह नहीं है, राइट? एक्सेप्शन, एक्सेप्ट कैप्स में लिखा है, इट इज सीन एज अ फॉर्म ऑफ सर्विस टू द एकेडमिक कम्युनिटी। ये एक्सेप्शन नहीं है क्योंकि they do it for this reason, right? First paragraph clear. It helps them keep current with cutting edge ideas in the academic discipline. You keep abreast wala line. So this is also not an exception. It is seen as an opportunity to expand their influence in the academic community. This is an exception. This is an exception because this was never said. Some use this as an opportunity to publicize their own reviewers. No, this is not an exception. So number three or option C will be correct. We are done and we will stop here.